So let's have a look at one article here today, which can be kind of linked to cryptocurrencies as well, if you like decentralization and kind of more power to the people. This is, of course, an opposite article here, which talks about George Orwell's dystopian nightmare in China. And of course, it's about 1984, the book. Beijing tyranny over its people is fast becoming more terrifying than anything in 1984. This article says here, it has become fairly cliche to call China's surveillance state, its artificial intelligence-driven facial recognition, the new social credit system, its cultural policing and re-education camps, and for these, for these minorities as well. Something right out of George Orwell's 1984. And although this might be the case in China, I think we're also seeing this similar situations in some areas in the Western world as well, and maybe in the US and in Europe, where the education system, of course, is what it hasn't changed since 100 years, and they're still teaching the same information, which is a lot of it is not even correct. A lot of theories is based on false information or whatever they want to spread, the ruling class. So that is of course not not the truth, if that's what you look for. So it's not just in China, but let's go on here. Orwell warned that Orwell's warning went well beyond the wars we knew. It cautioned, noted Eric Fromm in Afterword in '61, against the loss of humanity and free thought. I mean, this is something that is, of course, worrisome. And the new, increasingly centralized managerial industrialism, in which man builds machine, which acts like man and develops men who act like machines. And this is something that we can observe, of course, today as well. This was just one part of it. The internet, of course, is strictly censored, while one can buy a copy of 1984. Any reference comparing it to modern authoritarian governments, especially Maoism, is forbidden. The Chinese Communist Party does not say war is peace, but it does claim to care about democracy while denying space for competing views to be expressed in public. But this is more like a global problem, that I find that the media is, of course, controlled by very few, and it's almost like a James Bond movie. I mean, it's what do you want tomorrow's news to be? We'll put it in the paper, and that's it. That's how it seems to work, and maybe that's funny, but at least some people, they wanna have journalism which is kind of two-sided, and what's good, what's bad, or what's who is for, who is against, and things like that. So they keep on. It's kind of a long article here. I'm not going to talk about everything here. It was terribly dangerous to let your thoughts wander when you were in any public place or within range of a telescreen. Winston explains, the smallest thing could give you away: a nervous tic, an unconscious look of anxiety, habit of muttering to yourself, anything that carried with it the suggestion of abnormality, of having something to hide, not showing the proper joy when it was warranted, or hate when it was called for, could be punished as a face crime. And this is, of course, something that they're testing out now these days as well, in more and more extreme ways. And so something to be aware of. I mean, it can be maybe a fun thing as well for some people, but you can also have the other side where it gets very annoying. Not only ATMs use facial technology, it's also other things. Because this technology is deployed everywhere, people are now paying with their face at the growing number of retail chains and travel stations. Government has access to broader and more complex data streams, where individuals shop and how much debt they carry, where they socialize. I mean, this is something that we're seeing as well in the West, not only in China, although maybe they have more advanced system. I don't know about that. but and then it's almost like you get points for, you know, how good are you, how bad did you react with too much anger, then you get some minus points and so on. He keeps on saying here, in 1984, Winston describes a world in which any transgression against the state's arbitrary rules or codes of behavior could mean one was vaporized or completely annihilated from existence. Some were sent to camps, and so, you know, it's really not very pleasant. Good behavior is rewarded mostly with streamlined services, like getting in at a faster queue at the hospital, not paying a deposit on rental cars and things like that. Bad behavior, which can include protesting and petitioning the government, can leave one locked out of public service and social media. According to reports, more than 11 million people have already been prevented from taking flights or high-speed rail based on bad social credit scores. I mean, if this is really true, I mean, that's very interesting, and kind of a scary, paints up a scary future for most of us. I don't think that this is how we want to live, where we are, you know, just looking at apps and, you know, depending on how we choose there, your family and friends and yourself can be affected in a good or bad way. Their eyes are blinded and their ears are blocked. They know little about the world and live in an illusion. Yeah, that sounds like most people, actually, or at least that's my feeling, but I might be completely wrong. It's a state-driven program designed to do one thing: to uphold and expand the Chinese Communist Party's power. So, but this is not only in China. This works in any kind of, well, democracy, if you want to call it that. But most states, most countries these days they're almost run like a mini Chinese government. You think you have democracy, but it's actually not, and or at least not as much as it could be. It's very controlled, and but that's something that I think most people know about since many years. But it's getting more extreme, I think, over the last 10 years or so. You can really notice it, and the last 5 years, 2 years as well. There's more and more disinformation on the internet. You know, 5 years ago you used to be able to Google something, I don't know, a recipe for pancakes, and now you can still do that, but there's an increasing amount of disinformation as well. So make sure it's really the pancake recipe in the recipe itself and not for something else. You never know what pops up these days. You know, this is a scary thought, and you know, like we said before, it's 1984 was supposed to be a warning for the future and not a guideline, but it seems some people have taken it, some ruling people have taken it as a guideline for how they want the future to be, and that's of course not going to be nice for 99% of the people living in this world, but can be fun maybe as an experiment to try out some of these features, maybe with artificial intelligence. That's maybe a good idea, but to base your lives on that then in the future, and you know, now you have to go shopping this or buying that, and then you get a good score, or if you don't, then you don't get it, and so on. That's just ridiculous. But it's a fun game to play maybe for some time, but I think in the long run it gets a little bit boring, and unless you really love it, then maybe it's for you. You know, it's that's how it looks like here and what they're talking about. So keep that in mind. I think that's why also cryptocurrencies came up a bit, the decentralization in this area, and why some people are choosing that over centralized organizations. Maybe even why some centralized organizations like Facebook now, maybe they want to push their own cryptocurrency or something like this. It's very possible. And you know, if that helps anything, that will have to be seen. But it's interesting to note at least, and so keep that in mind next time you go shopping or something, and or if you download an app that maybe, you know, maybe the app is watching your behavior, and you will be judged what you are doing, although you don't know maybe exactly what you should be doing always. But so anyhow, to be continued. Take care, guys.